Hi team, I'm Aditya Nizam and I'm working as a product manager in the field of sourcing, and today we'll look about how we can make use of AI for recommending different types of negotiation processes or suppliers to improve the savings. Talking about the use case, I've considered a buyer who is performing sourcing for some line items or some services, and he wants the system to recommend certain suppliers for him, because as an end user he is not aware what all actions he can perform. So there are two cases: one while drafting the event, where he can take input from the AI assistant to add certain suppliers which are relevant for your event, and at the time of analysis of the results, wherein the system can recommend further negotiation processes to get better results from the suppliers. Talking about designing the UX, we'll follow the guidelines or the UX guidelines as we learned in the module. The first one being visibility. In the drafting stage of the event, we can show a simple banner message to the users, which is quite intuitive for the users to click on. So if I am adding certain details, the system will simply tell me that there are 4 or 5 recommended suppliers that I can simply add to the event. I can click on it. I can see why the system has recommended these suppliers, and on the basis of simple actions like add, the supplier should get automatically added to my event. The second one being at the analysis stage. I've received the supplier responses, I can see the total prices, and next to it I get a pop-up or a pop-out message stating improve savings. If I click on that icon, so this icon will only appear if there is a possible scope for improvement, and if I click on it, the system will show me the possible ways in which I can perform negotiations, whether it is through conducting a new RFP event or a new round of RFP event, or I create an auction event, or directly have an offline negotiation with the suppliers. Talking about feedback, after recommending the suppliers or receiving the negotiated quotes, we can ask for a rating, that whether the recommendations were helpful for the user or not, and if helpful, to what extent were they useful. In terms of negotiated savings, we can also display the results side by side for better comparison. Let's say earlier my savings was 10%. With the help of AI recommended negotiations, I was able to improve it by further 4% with an overall savings rate of 14%. So that is something that I can see upfront as a user, and I can see the output, or basically the outcome of the tool, that it is optimizing my savings. This can also be utilized by the AI model directly, that based on certain inputs, the there was a scope for 10% savings, but achieved savings was 4% out of it. So these corrections or relearning techniques can be implemented there as part of feedback. Talking about constraints, so these recommendations should not use much resource of the UI. It should be a small message or a small pop-out, which will be non-mandatory for the users to use, and even if the user clicks on it, it should have minimal actions like, do you want to add the supplier? Yes, and it will automatically add the supplier, or if he says no, then no action needs to be performed there. If he wants to negotiate further, the system should provide basic uh, tiles, like you want to create a new RFP round or auction, and if you click on auction, it will automatically create that event and send it out to the suppliers. So those are minimal actions that needs to be performed by the end user based on what is recommended by the AI. Mappings. Depending on the status of the event, the action should be mapped to the relevant details. For example, if I have supplier recommendation, it should be mapped directly with the supplier addition activity, whereas the negotiation recommendation should be mapped with their individual negotiation tools in the system. In terms of consistency, the look and feel of the wizard should be consistent with the entire document. It should not look like it is a new component standalone which is added to the system. In terms of clarity, the actions are or have to be very clear in terms of what the user wants to do with those negotiate or the recommendations. For example, if he clicks on add suppliers, it will automatically add the supplier, or if he wants to initiate certain negotiations, it should be clear enough for the user to follow. Moving ahead to privacy considerations, we should follow the 3 steps as mentioned in this slide. The first one being consent. We should take the consent of the organization with whom we'll be working on these AI features, or to whom we are selling these features, and the message has to be clearly conveyed to them that their transactional information might be used for process optimization while maintaining anonymity of the users and the organization. Now, this recommendation piece should be opt-in feature, and it should not be mandatory for all the users. Only if the organization agrees that they are okay with the sharing of data, we can work with them to have these recommendations implemented. In terms of compliance, considering that the tool will be used across the globe by different buyers or the suppliers, even if the buyer is not a European buyer, there is a possibility that the suppliers who are responding to the sourcing events could be Europeans, and as per the European law, uh, the tool will have to abide by the or has to be compliant with the GDPR regulations. From an approach perspective, we need to follow the differential privacy method, because the federal approach of getting inputs from a device will not be possible, since this feature would be a web-based feature and not on a specific device. The information from different clients needs to be dumped into a single database, so that which information is relevant or refers to which organization or the buyer should not be identifiable from the database. In terms of relevance or related information, uh, the system should take care or take into account the proper hashing or anonymization of personal or organization related information. Talking about ethical considerations, the 3 areas where we have to consider these are fairness. The system should fairly weight the attributes for different suppliers within a group and different groups which are there for different suppliers. Now, talking about an example, the preference of an American buyer would be to have a diverse supplier, and within those diverse suppliers, I could have certain preferred or incumbent suppliers for whom I would provide some additional weightage. Now, it could be sectoral or sector based, considering different sectors, like if it is related to IT, I need not have incumbent suppliers with whom I have transportation contracts. I could use any other supplier who has diverse certification and will be providing me the services. Whereas for materials like oil or heavy duty materials, it is better to have incumbent suppliers So the weightages would be, or the biases would be sector based with different suppliers. In terms of accountability, we'll have to organize a new team to manage the AI recommendation project, who will be accountable for the entire training, testing, and delivery of these features. From a transparency perspective, as we discussed earlier, if a system is providing me recommendation, next to it, it will show me why the system has recommended certain results. For example, if I have a particular supplier recommended, the system should tell me that it was recommended because he is a preferred supplier for that category or incumbent supplier in multiple organizations for that particular category or line item. Now, here we also need to highlight what information will be used and for what purpose. So, the event related information like line item, sectors, regions would be useful for AI model training and providing the outputs for the same. In addition to that, we have supplier related factors like the risk ratings, preference of the buyers, diversity, certifications, etc., which will be relevant for recommendations or providing better savings. So that was it related to the AI project for recommending suppliers or negotiation steps in the field of sourcing.